Dorks and Forks is brought to you by His and Hers Couples Boutique, Kirkwood Highway, Wilmington.
Dorks and Forks.
So, Lee, you spent a lot of time out there on the West Coast.
20 years. I was very happy there.
Yeah.
Not that I don't love Delaware. Delaware's awesome, and my family's all out here.
Well, tell me a little bit about it. When you went out there and how you started?
It was 91, and I moved to San Francisco first, and that's not where comedy was. So, and I knew that Venice Beach was just something that I was destined to try, and it just all started there, and it just blossomed out of that first summer in Venice Beach. From there, it went to the Improv, and from that, did a lot of television. Actually, they did a whole episode of the Drew Carey Show based on the puppets. The entire cast turned into the puppets. That was a really big highlight. But it's because Venice, I got to work for Frank Zappa. I went out to LA, I will say this, hoping to meet celebrities. It was a big part of my agenda because it's not the celebrity part. The people that I admire became famous because they did something brilliant, and Frank Zappa was somebody I thought I'd never get to meet. That happened within 4 months of being there.
Wow.
But it was one of the greatest things that ever happened. And stuff like I was in a movie with Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. And we got along on the set. I didn't know he was going to become Quentin Tarantino. And then years later, we got to be friends again. So
What was the movie?
It's called Eddie Presley, The Life and Times of Eddie Presley. And the guy that wrote and stars in it is Maynard in Pulp Fiction. He's the one who owns the pawn shop.
Right,
Yeah, it's his film. He stars in it. It was a stage play. I'm sorry, I'm looking over this way. How rude. It was a stage play, Eddie Presley, and then he turned into this feature film. And when they released it, they beefed up Quentin's part when they released it on DVD.
Wow.
That's so interesting.
That's so cool.
That's so interesting. And I'm also seeing here that you entertained the cast of Seinfeld on their rap party.
That was awesome. That was the first night that I worked at the Improv, I worked with Seinfeld. He came up 2 acts later.
Wow.
And I know he hated prop comics. Who wouldn't? I hate prop comics. And the word puppets is just dreadful. I never let him say it before I would take the stage. But years later, I couldn't believe it. He remembered. He said, get that guy for the worked right on the street set.
Yeah.
And they had me move around to different places. I got to do on top of the counter in the kitchen. Do all my puppets there. That's
awesome.
That was a real.
So what drew you to puppetry in the first place?
Total accident. By the way, that's not the great Quentin Tarantino story. That's the boring one. There's the great one comes later if you want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to hear it.
Is totally because I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix. I was telling this. Saw this Jimi Hendrix movie at the State Theater, and I sucked on guitar. And I went home and I tried for a year, and I just couldn't get good. And I wanted to be remarkable. And turns out I didn't even want to play the guitar. I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
So I made this puppet when I was 15, and then I was in art school, and I had this puppet to make art supply money. And I went out on the street and really fast got on TV with that. And it just kept building and building, and I resented it. I didn't like puppets.
Sure.
I liked a toy. I wanted a toy of Jimi Hendrix, and it just kept growing. Expanded the show, moved to LA. It's just I followed it around. In fact, it's because of this one Jimi Hendrix puppet that I've done all the cool stuff I've ever done.
Wow. That's so awesome.
Made it when I was 15, and it's the centerpiece of my universe.
So you hand make all of your puppets.
I certainly do.
And it's a combination of, go ahead and explain it for our audience.
It's a wireframe and then cellular clay over the top. So my brother Drew Zimmerman was a master, and he just was a paper mache everything. He still is a paper mache god. And puppets for him was just something he could teach me for my birthday. And he said, what do you want to make? I said, Hendrix.
Yeah.
And that just led to it. And I wasn't going to make a whole lot of characters. But then by the time I hit LA, all this TV work just kept coming up. And the answer to any question in LA is absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Unless it's porn. And then you get more money.
Yeah. Well, you got to say it with enthusiasm. Yeah.
I'll do that porn.
You just say yeah.
We want to get to your story about Quentin Tarantino, and I have 1,000 puppet questions for you, but I want to make sure that Chef Robbie over here can get in the kitchen and start doing his thing. So we're going to excuse him for a moment.
Sure, that sounds good.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Cheers.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see you.
See you in a bit.
All right, so you're timed. It's 30 minutes to cook for the Dorks and Forks. Ready?
It's going to get real loud in there if I got to cook in 30 minutes.
No, it's fine. You take your time.
It's really a warehouse dressed to look like
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Behind these windows, we have production assistants.
That's right. And then, of course,
right.
you can check out all the pictures of Robbie's food process in the kitchen on our Instagram at Dorks and Forks.
Yeah, and this is a highlight of your career, right? I mean, like cooking for the Dorks and Forks. I mean,
I can't imagine anything going up from here.
Right, you beat Bobby Flay.
Yeah, it's only downhill from here.
It's only
You hung out a guy, and now you're in the kitchen
I'm peaking.
of Dorks and Forks.
Well,
All right.
we can't wait.
Cheers, man.
I'm
Thank
really
you so much.
excited.
Yep,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Robbie.
So, Tarantino, the better story.
Do you really want to hear it?
Yes.
Yeah, let's
That's
do it,
so
man.
good. My ex-wife and I just loved him. And she was a Playboy Playmate of the Year. I got to perform at the Playboy Mansion. That was like the second year that I was there. And I knew her magazine. In fact, I had said to my friend right there on Stinsford Road in Newark, when I saw her issue, I was 14. And I said, I'm going to marry this woman
Get
one
out.
day. And I did. And
So-
when I met her, I said to her at the Playboy Mansion, I've been dating you for 14 years. Excuse me, for 14 years. And years of going to the mansion, it was like 2001. We met in 92, and then 2001. We're leaving for a Halloween party.
Yeah.
Tarantino's walking in. She just exploded. Oh my God! And he just ran over there. Basically, we spoke in shorthand with all of his films. Those first four, at that time it was 3 films. We just constantly talked about them. And I reached in my pocket and said, dude, I would never bother you, but we based our marriage on True Romance. His first film. It was his first script. He didn't direct that one.
Right.
And I whipped out pictures of us getting married at the Graceland Wedding Chapel because the centerpiece of True Romance is Elvis. So I showed him pictures of us getting married by Elvis. He just thought that was the greatest thing. And I said, we quoted the movie in our wedding vows. And he's like blown out of the water. He remembered her. He's like, he remembered her cover. Deborah Jo, oh my God, you're Deborah Jo. So a couple days later, we got an invite to his house. We started hanging out with him at his house.
Wow.
And I don't know if you remember Dorothy Stratton. She was the Playboy Playmate that was murdered.
Right, yes.
Her little sister wanted to know all kinds of Dorothy stories. Deborah knew her. So we were hanging with Quentin and Dorothy at Quentin's house watching on his enormous screen. Like it's his, we never went to the main house. We just always hung out in his projection private theater, which his television was the size of this wall. I mean, it was just massive. And his theater is a real theater with theater seats, cup holders in the seats, reclining chairs, the whole deal. It's like 50 seats. And he was just the coolest guy. There's all this great Pulp Fiction stuff, not memorabilia, but art that people had produced for him.
Wow.
It's just incredible. We're hanging out with him for like an entire winter and a part of the summer. And then he invited us to come and see Pulp Fiction at his house. Actually, his girlfriend called and said, we want you to come out. Members of the cast will be there, and we'll be talking about production. Basically, it was going to be a live-action writer-director commentary.
Wow.
And Deborah didn't want to go. Deborah Jo did not want to go because she'd seen some stuff there that she was long past. Let's put it that way. And she just it made her uncomfortable. We knew everybody that was going to. She knew everybody. She was pretty famous on her own.
Yeah.
So when we get there and get this invitation, it was just impossible for me to wrap my head around the fact we are turning this down.
Yeah.
And he calls personally. It was the one and only time he called personally. He goes, you do understand what I'm talking about? I said, Quentin, I completely understand. We're having the biggest fight we've had this entire year. I don't know what to tell you. Wow. He goes, put her on the phone, and she wouldn't budge. And years later, she still regrets it. I talked to her today. We did not mention it, but I sent her to the new film, which is his best film ever. And it's the reason that I'm moving back to L.A. Watching this new film, A Love Letter to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I just sat there. I've seen it 4 times now. I sat there and I thought, I have to get back. He loves his city.
Yeah.
This film, I don't know if you've seen it yet. And when I meet him again, I'm going to say, I'm only back because of you, dude.
Of you. Yet again.
So the punchline of all that is he remembered us enough to talk about us on the True Romance commentary when it came out. So he mentions Deborah and I in this commentary, and he's just like, and they mentioned, he mentioned the Graceland Wedding Chapel, and if you go there, you could still see a portrait of us on the wall in Vegas.
Awesome.
If you go there, next to Bon Jovi and the drummer from Def Leppard.
Oh man, maybe we'll see if we can do some kind of audio pull of that piece of commentary from True Romance. That'll be really cool.
I hope that wasn't too long, but that was to fly over the version in a helicopter and describe the story.
So they were there was these crazy sex parties at these premieres.
Whatever imagination you think of the mansion, that's what it was.
Yeah. Wow.
It was exactly what your imagination says the Playboy Mansion was. It saw so many awesome things. If it wasn't for the non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you've got a lot of other Hollywood crazy.
Tons. Oh man, like I said, it was. And for a while there, I was just on this this strange energy where they just kept walking up, and it was always people that I admired. The one and only guy, I did get to meet him. Of all the people that I wanted to work with, I just kept doing that. My favorite drummer, Terry Bozzio. Yeah. He wanted me to open for him just so he could put on the Hollywood Palace marquee Puppet Show and Terry Bozzio, so he could do the Spinal Tap joke.
Yes.
And my original drummer was going to be Terry Bozzio, and that was just a weird connection. That led to the Zappa thing the next night, and then I worked for Zappa's again years later. Lisa Loeb did a video, and I made this Hello Kitty puppet that played the guitar, and Dweezil directed, and it was like all these circles kept getting closed. I'd known of Deborah Jo for years. On our first date, we just knew we were going to be lifelong partners, and it just like all this stuff just kept happening. Another one was Guns N' Roses. I did their final rap party, and Zappa was a good one. Seinfeld was a good one. I'm sorry, I actually wrote down some of the better ones. Oh, just a couple weeks ago, Tame Impala. Do you guys know the band Tame Impala?
No.
Kevin Parker. Over on Saturday Night Live. Do you?
No, she does.
I made somebody. His manager hired me to make a portrait of him. And he posted on his Instagram. People are going nuts. He loves his puppet. He asked for a second one, so I made another one that he uses bare feet on pedal board. So I made this pedal board with magnets in it, so the puppet can touch all the buttons.
Awesome!
Really excited about that one.
That's awesome.
It just seemed like for a long time there, it was just celebrity after celebrity that I admired. It wasn't, and celebrity isn't it? It's the stuff they did to become famous.
Right,
That blows me out of the water.
But you had this hair back in the 90s.
See, that was the
and I feel like it was the hair that got you in.
It was.
It was glorious. It was like something out of a Bon Jovi video.
Yeah.
The week that I met Deborah Jo, I also met Demi Moore. And Demi Moore had her assistant call me and ask me out.
Come on.
And
No.
I know. I'm looking at me too. I have a mirror. I know. I have a mirror, dude. But it was the hair. The hair was like, it was everything. It was something to hide behind, as Hendrix used to say.
And it was the 90s, too. So
it was perfect timing. And I had to say no because she hired me to do the National Lampoon Loaded Weapon. Yeah. And Deborah and I just met. She would not let me go alone, and she wore this top that was daff and it's tied in the center. The crew was going nuts, and I could have dated Demi Moore.
Oh, wow.
Deborah Jo, I knew it was her forever.
Yeah.
She's my hero.
What's the age difference between you and Deborah Jo?
She's 7 years older.
All right. Yeah, that makes because you were 14 when you first.
I was 14 when it took me 14 more years to close the deal.
Right. Now, I also see, well, it happens. I also see that you opened for Cher. What was that experience
That was pretty cool. Kiss FM did this event. And I met Chaka Khan that night.
Oh, wow.
I met Natalie Cole again. I'd met her actually here. Remember Pulsations?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Terrible, cheesy place. Met her there. And Poison. Remember the band Poison? Jade Starling. I met her there. Opening for Cher was good.
That's awesome.
And I got along famously with her son because I knew he was going to talk guitars. We just talked guitar stuff all night.
That's great. That's great.
Elijah Blue.
But you originally went out to L.A. to be a comedian. Is that what I'm understanding?
The show, though. I mean, using the puppet show. But when I got there, they did have me. They said, it's not always the puppets. You don't have to do that. So I did some MC work.
Right.
Without the puppets, I was terrified because just like the hair, something to hide behind.
Right.
And I was just terrified. But I had the hair, so I was okay. Hide behind the hair and walk out on stage.
Yeah.
And talk. But the TV thing, I worked in some special effects in San Francisco making miniatures.
Okay.
For ride simulators.
Oh.
So I did some of that. I mean, basically, it's like do a million things when I was in LA.
Yeah.
One after the other.
What else do you have on those index cards?
I just remembered a good one. Working for Slash at his house.
Get out.
Oh, yeah?
So how did that come about?
That was his manager thought I was going to do the video for them. And said, you should see this guy's show. And he brings me to Slash's house. It's what led to the Guns N' Roses final rap party where Axl sat right there with his back to the show. Because he had heard that I have an Axl Rose puppet in the show I treated really poorly. And Slash loved that. He picked up the puppet and he goes, hey, this looks like a chick I used to date. He hated. But I went to Slash's house and it is incredible. He's the nicest guy in the universe.
Yeah.
His entire house is terrariums. Not terrariums, herpetology stuff. It's just, he has snakes on every wall going up the staircases.
Oh, yeah?
Just an incredible guy. And I went upstairs and I ran my finger up every one of his guitars in his private studio. It was right when they were about to break up. And he said something really amazing. He watches the show. He stares at me. I finished the Hendrix puppet. He looks over at me and he goes, you're scary, dude. You're the scariest guy in all of rock and roll. But then he says, it's a little thin.
Yeah.
It's a little thin for this music video that Gary Goldman ended up doing with the band called Gary Oldman. Sorry, it was their cover of Skyliner's song that I love, Since I Don't Have You.
Yes.
So it was the spaghetti incident. And I was really, like, he's blown away. I could see that he's blown away, but it was too thin. I never forgot that. He was thinking it was going to be darker, more grotesque.
Sure.
And then I ended up working for him a couple more times after that. He was just one of the coolest guys. When I look at the index card, that one jumps out.
That's awesome.
That's a great guy.
That's awesome. Well, you're going to do a show for us later, right?
Can't wait.
Yeah. We'll be right back. Dorks and Forks. Dorks and Forks.
Dorks and Forks. Dorks and Forks. Dorks and Forks. Dorks and Forks.
So we're back.
So, Brian,
Yeah.
Lee and I were just talking
Oh, that's good.
while we were smelling this delicious food that
does
Chef
smell
Robbie
great.
has. And we were talking about, art house movies and that kind of stuff. And he asked me a great question. What's my favorite film?
And you.
And, well, the reason behind it, Lee, if you want to say, like, that's that unifying...
It's my unifying theory that your favorite film speaks volumes about you. And usually you can give them 2 to 3 films because nobody can single it down.
Right.
Sure.
But if you had one.
So if I have one, and you know what, it's a kind of a trite answer among people my age in particular, but I really just like it from start to finish. It's a beautiful story. It's well told, and it has a beautiful picture. Is The Shawshank Redemption.
That's beautiful.
Shawshank Redemption. It's just and I do like my favorite movie. I do differentiate between like my favorite film and my favorite movie. My favorite like fun movie. Like I love the Back to the Future movies. They teach those movies in filmmaking class. To tell about plot exposition, and it's perfectly set up.
It's okay. So that was for years my favorite film of all time. Back to the Future. I used to carry a slice of the 35mm print because I was an usher when it came out.
Shut up.
You are not making it up. It is perfect. The first act sets up the second act perfectly, and it ties together. It's a solid circle. That film is unlike any other film. Yeah,
they don't make movies like that. We were actually. I have a edit of Back to the Future that I made myself. That is Back to the Future.
Nice.
It's one solid from start to finish, and it is amazing. And it's just. The movie's perfect. It perfectly sets up everything. You see, there's a scene that's cut out right after Marty gets home and like the car's wrecked from Biff wrecked the car because George didn't tell him there was a blind spot, which is so ridiculous. And he spilled beer all over himself. But anyway,
the car towed all the way here. All you have for me is a light beer.
A light beer, right? So, but right after that, in the original script, and they actually shot it, Biff leaves, and Marty and George are talking about, like, Dad, why do you have to be such a pushover? Can't you just say no? And then this neighbor walks in with his kid, who's like, it's kind of like a Girl Scout thing. He's like, hey, my kid's selling these peanut brittle. I can put you down for a case, right, George? And he's like, yeah. And then it's like, oh, man, here's a case of peanut brittle. And then that's when it cuts to the dinner scene.
Where is he?
And he's pouring the peanut brittle into the bowl when they're watching the honeymoons. Right. And he's like, oh, Dad, you just couldn't say no. But it's like little pieces. They're perfectly setting up his weakness for when you see him knock Biff out later. And it's those little seeds that they plant all throughout. Same thing with The Shawshank Redemption.
That's a great choice.
Yeah.
May I ask what yours is?
My favorite film? Oh, boy.
Shawshank's such a good choice, mate.
Well, I don't know. I've got the Citizen Kane poster. I know, like, when I was a kid, it was more like Orson Welles that inspired me. It wasn't so much a film; it was the filmmaker. Mm-hmm. I love Orson Welles. Army of Darkness, kind of Evil Dead.
Sure.
Those are one of my favorites.
I have an ash.
Yeah.
Do you have an ash? You have an ash puppet?
You have an ash puppet?
Get out.
I made 2 now.
Oh, what?
Yeah, but
he has the chainsaw hand?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Brilliant.
And the boomstick.
That's it.
That was it. It was a great show. I'm very well fed and very well entertained, and I couldn't ask for anything more.
Lee, thanks. So where can people find you one last time?
ThePuppetGuy.com.
Yeah, nice.
Or EtchaSketchGuy.com.
Very cool. On Facebook and all that too, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's right. And of course, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dorks and Forks. And make sure you subscribe to our channel on your Apple Music and your SoundCloud accounts, and hopefully wherever you listen to your podcast.
Yeah, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. So thanks so much for wasting another hour of your life listening to us. See ya next time, Dorks and Forks.
Goodbye.
Dorks and Forks is brought to you by His and Hers Adult Boutique. Hosted by Dan Sanchez and Brian Wild. Produced by Heather Brand and Brian Wild. Edited and engineered by Brian Wild. Music and theme song by RKVC. To be a guest on our show, message us on Facebook or Instagram, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.